Hey y'all, Vanilla here, and welcome to a very different video this time. First and foremost, I'm sorry for the lack of uploads. Life has been, well, I have not been kind to myself, but that's another story. This video is going to be a long one. Possibly it's also going to be very rambly and not really focused because I'm just going to ad-lib this and basically talk out of my mind. But I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna be a little story time about how I was working at a furniture store for about 4.5 years, from 2017 till 2022, and how it absolutely ruined me mentally. I would say even ruined my life, right? Because some stuff that happened is still on my mind. I'm still very, questioning some things. I'm basically scarred, right? I would say. This sounds harsh, but bear with me. So, I'm just gonna start from the beginning. So in 2017, I was 19 years old and basically had no idea what to do in life after graduating from high school. I also don't have any idea about life. I have no clue. I was basically an empty shell that had no self-confidence whatsoever, because at every school I've been bullied, I've been an outsider, basically, your typical nerd, whatever. So yeah, I was basically an empty shell that took everything at face value, and, so in 2017, I had no idea, so they enrolled me in a program where you would basically sit at a laptop from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. and basically look for jobs and write applications, write resumes, basically get your foot in the door of employment. So, after 2 months of that not working out, or, getting nothing really, the guy who sits next to me came back. I was like, where is he? Oh yeah, he's working. But then he came back, because he couldn't take the word, I guess, so he just left, right? But because he left, there was a gap in, staff. So they asked me, hey, do you want to try it out? Because, they're now looking for staff because that guy left. And I'm like, sure. Because remember, I took everything at face value. I basically just went with the flow. So I tried it out, and apparently it worked out so well that shortly after I signed a contract to be employed there, right? And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about that store. So the store was a very small furniture store where around 8 people or 9 people in total worked there, including me. And it was owned by 2 people. One of them, well, I will call them bosses, but basically there was one of them was, the kind of normal type. You could talk to him, he basically understood that working together is the way, and, he treated you sorta normally. The other one, on the other hand, hell yeah, Bowser Castle 3. The other one, on the other hand, was either his way or the highway, right? Only his way of working was the best, and everyone else was stupid, irrational, and, basically wrong, right? Stupid, whatever. And basically, he talked everyone down. I learned after I already stopped working there that he was a picture book narcissist. I didn't know at that time, and I'm gonna get to that, but basically, he talked everyone down. He loved playing mind games. He loved, putting people in traps where he could, make them, belittle them, and basically, you know what I mean. Oh, low trick. But yeah, the normal boss I would call the nice boss, and the other I would call the mean boss. So, yeah, Um, so, the mean boss likes to play mind games. One example, this is gonna be an anecdote, was in COVID, because, you know, I worked there in the 2020s when COVID hit, and we had, you know, lockdown, people needed to do social distancing, and right, so we put down a sticker where basically it shows the distance people have to take from each other. And after that was sort of lifted, you know, people were able to, you know, not social distance anymore. The sticker was unnecessary, right? So, you know, someone needs to take it off. Now, the mean boss came to some of us, because we were like working in teams, because most of the core staff that was selling stuff, like salespersons, were part-time workers that only came at a certain days of the week, and also only for like 3 hours. 4 hours. But yeah, we like were working in like semi-teams. And the mean boss came to us and was like, don't take the sticker off, because he wants to see if the others are smart enough to notice the sticker and take it off themselves. So basically he was luring others in a trap so he can talk them down. That's one example that I keep remembering. Right? Again, this video is gonna be very unfocused, I'm sorry. I don't remember everything, but I actually made screenshots of rants that I had in the Discord server. So I have a few ideas, like a few memories. So yeah, the mean boss likes to play mind games. He was also, you know, he also used the N-word as a slavery term. And I'm gonna leave it at that. But yeah, he was, you know, your typical, basically only his way of working, or, you know, it was stupid, it was double the work, it was irrational, and stuff. But yeah, but the female co-workers, and we had like 4 female co-workers, he treated them with a lot of care, a lot of respect, basically touched them with velvet gloves, as we say in German. And, you know, us male workers, you know, when he would catch us sitting somewhere, and basically like right after we got done work, we'd like sit down and have a little chat, you know. He basically would scold us and be like, why are you sitting down, you lazy asses, basically like that, right? But the female co-workers, he would drag them into the break room and basically have like hour-long chats with them. And, you know, he would, you know, talk to them and have a chat. Meanwhile, with us, all we would hear from him is how stupid the others are and how superior he is, right? Right. Now, his wife, who, you know, also worked there, she wasn't a boss, but she thought she was one, and my mean boss kind of also treated her like a co-boss, right? Even though she wasn't the owner, and I didn't really treat her like a higher up. There was one occasion where she would yell at me, because of course she did, because, you know, she likes just talking people down and just being a crow. She literally had the voice of a crow. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But basically after she like ranted at me and I kind of, you know, stood my ground, she was like, who do you think the boss is? And I literally told her, not you, because I was just fed up and I was just, you know. So I basically just stood up and be like, not you. So, you know, of course she was fuming, and she must have told her husband, because later I've been pulled in by her husband, you know, the mean boss, and he basically sat me down and be like, you know what happened back in the day when people disrespected their higher-ups? I was like, no, what do you mean? And he's like, and I'm not kidding, they would get stood at the wall and get shot. That's literally what he said. Now, we live in Germany, so we don't have easy access to guns. So that threat wasn't really him like threatening to shoot me. It was more of an kind of metaphor kind of thing. I don't know, but you know where I'm getting at. He basically, you know, was very mean and you know, that. Now, another anecdote about my mean boss was when so I worked 2 times at 2 different times, either from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. right? Or from 8 a.m. till 4:45. Right? And the 8 a.m. was when we, you know, would deliver stuff, like deliver furniture, because we also delivered and assembled at people's houses. And yeah, there was one time where, because I usually was early, because I went by bus, I would usually be there at like 7:30 or 7 a.m. actually. So my mean boss would usually be there already, because he goes there at like 6 a.m. because he would usually assemble stuff in his workshop before we open, and he would, you know, basically get stuff ready. And you know, we would also, one thing we also do is we would take like beware furniture that had like damage on it. We would fix it up as best as we can and then sell it for cheaper prices, like a display piece. We also did that. So usually he would like assemble stuff, or you know, sort things out, put stuff in storage, this kind of stuff, right? We also have multiple storage workers, or rather 1 storage worker. At one point we had 2, but they all left because, you know, they couldn't take the mean boss's bullshit. And I actually stayed there, as I said, for 4.5 years, and the reason I stayed there for that long was because, aside of him and his wife, I actually had a very good relationship with everyone else there, you know, with my co-workers, with my nice boss, where I will also get to in due time. But you know, I stayed there for long because, you know, it was like, okay, you know, he's an asshole, but aside of that, you know, I'm very well acquainted now with the work, and they can't really, you know, replace me because I learned a lot. Yet they yelled at me every single day, or ranted at me, and I did stuff wrong, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I forgot that, I forgot this. Now, you know, I have ADHD, and like, I, you know, get distracted easily, so I would sometimes forget stuff. Now, when they rant at me about forgetting stuff, of course I will get more insecure. Stuff, and then more stuff would go wrong. You know, it's a downward spiral. But basically, the bottom line was, there was not a single day, or almost not a single day, where I would get ranted at, either by my mean boss, because of course I did, or even my nice boss would complain later a lot after, like, even like earlier in my work, basically like all the time. And now that I, you know that my nice boss isn't actually that nice, but I'll get to that. But basically, almost every day there was something they would complain about. I would forget this, I did this wrong, you know, I'm stupid because I did this like that, or I forgot something, or I damaged stuff, you know, that, or, you know, I wouldn't see stuff, like, you know, I wouldn't clean the store because I saw that it was dirty or something like that. Basically, I would be restless all the time, because once you like sit down and they would catch you, they would, you know, rant at you why you sit down, you know, that kind of deal. But basically, that anecdote. So at one point I went there and it was 6 in the morning, or 7 in the morning. And my mean boss was there, like, assembling stuff, and I would help him. Now, my nice boss would usually come in at like 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. to, you know, prepare stuff before we open. He was more the, you know, doing the paperwork, ordering stuff, you know, that. So, I was there with my mean boss, and my nice boss comes in to the, you know, store, or the so the store has two parts, and one of them is obstructed by the other, by a hallway, right? But anyway, anecdote. So the nice boss would come in, and you know, as you do, you say hi. So I say hi, and as I say hi, or moin, as we say in German, my mean boss literally like knocked me on the head, like literally like knocked me, or you know, and basically said, the person coming in says hi. I remember that. Now my nice boss also complains a lot about him, like the mean boss, and you know, knows how much of a butthole he is. So he, you know, judged that very hard. But basically my mean boss kind of slapped me because I said hi first and not the person coming in. That was one time, right? And the other time was, you know, the one with shooting. Yeah. Well, those were like 2 anecdotes, right? Now, where was I? Oh yeah, the store was obstructed by a hallway, and it was in like 2 different buildings, obstructed by a hallway, right? So there needs to be at least 2 people, because one of each must watch one side of the store. Now back to the boss's wife. She would be, you know, she's quote-unquote also higher up, even though no one treats her as one, except, you know, her and her husband. You know, they complain about us, you know, sitting around, yet she also just sat around, did nothing, played like mobile games. I literally caught her playing mobile games for like 3 hours or something. I mean, to be fair, it must have been like a not so busy day, but you know, if you complain about us, you know, sitting around for like 10 seconds, and then you sit around and do nothing basically, right? I mean, she does also stuff, you know, she writes the price tags and, you know, stuff like that, but then, you know, she just sits down and calls or plays mobile games, this and that, you know. But, you know, there was one time, and this is another anecdote, where there was a customer that came in that I was like, hey, you know, if you have any questions, and that was a term that I you know, memorized. I was like, hey, if you have any questions, please, you know, ask me, right? I would have that like memorized. I could say that in my sleep. But that's what I always would say to customers, right? So, customer comes in, and he like looks at a desk that we were selling, and he says to me, he shows me, hey, I've seen this desk for cheaper online. And you know, since we're a small store, we have like margins. We can, you know, sell stuff for cheaper or something like that, you know. But basically, he saw the desk online for cheaper, and you know, he asked me, hey, can you like haggle on the price a little bit, or can I have it for that price, you know? And honestly, that's like a valid question, I don't know, but you know, so I was like, I cannot decide that, I must go to the higher ups, and I had to say higher ups because, you know, the bosses weren't around at that time. They were like having a break because each day one boss takes a break for like 1 hour, 2 hours, and then comes back, and the other boss just goes home at a specific time. But anyway, I go over and ask her, hey, you know, the customer saw this desk for that price online, can we haggle on the price? And now you must know, the customer was like Arabic, or, you know, Middle East. Middle East, correct? I don't know, but basically he was like Arabic, right? So I asked her, hey, you know, can we haggle on the price? or no, he asks her, and she just, in her crow voice, just basically says, well then you need to buy it there. She, like, literally almost yelled at him, because she was also talking very loud, like, all the time. You know, that's why I said crow voice. But basically, he said, oh well, then I'll do that, you know. So he leaves, and as he's about to leave, she yells after him, yeah, that's right, go home. Like, she just straight up said that. Right? Now, is it surprising that, you know, her and her husband are both racist? I might have said already that the guy uses the N-word as a slave term. I made like 30 takes of this video, so I don't know what I said and what I didn't say. Anyway, so, you know, she yells at him, and he like turns around and he like looks at her like, what the fuck? And I go after him and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, we always complain about her, like she's a problem to everyone. And he's like, is she like a boss? And I'm like, no, she isn't. But she's just watching the store for a bit, right? With me. So, you know, I apologize profusely, and, you know, he still looks around, and decides on a clothing hanger that he buys. So, so he decides on that clothing hanger, and he basically asks me, hey, I don't want to go back there. Understandable. He doesn't want to go back there. Can I, like, he gives me the money and I cash out. Now, at that time, I wasn't allowed to use the cash register. So we had a cash register and like an electronic card device, you know, where people could put their card in. Now, at that time, again, I wasn't allowed to use to do the cash register because it was sort of complicated. And, you know, they didn't want me to fuck stuff up, like booking, because it was like linked to computers and stuff. But basically, I wasn't allowed to, so I said to him, no, I can't do that. Like, she has to do it. I can only do card. So he was like, okay, fine. And I literally look if she's like gone, and she was at the break room at that time. So I was able to, you know, cash him out, like, or basically help him pay using card, whatever. You know, I don't know how to say it properly, but you know, I could use the card device, so he paid with card. So he takes his clothing hanger, you know, gets out, and I keep saying to him, I'm sorry, you know, don't be discouraged from buying here just because of her. We always complain about her, she's a problem to everyone, right? So after that's done, and he leaves, like 10 minutes later, she comes over to my part of the store, and basically said, because she saw the receipt, oh, did that guy buy a clothing hanger? And I was like, yeah, he did, that one. And I pointed at the, you know, the one that he bought. And she said, and I'm not kidding, well, another thing those, and she said, I think she said the K word. So in Germany we have an equivalent to the N word, which is the K word. German people know which one I'm talking about. Basically she said, oh yeah, well, other things those K words can't afford. They can't even afford a desk. That's literally what she said. And I literally was like cooking on the inside. I was like shuddering. So yeah, that's what she said. And you know, she also said something about them not being able to afford a washing machine. But you know, the fact that she said that just made me, and of course I couldn't yell at her because, you know, I don't wanna, you know, I'm not a very confrontational person. I do sometimes, you know, say, like earlier I stood up for myself, as I said. But I usually just keep it in, right? Swallow my pride or something, or whatever you call it. But yeah, that was one anecdote. Now, to kind of speed the video up, basically, you know, like every day I've been yelled at, I've been ranted at by both bosses. Both the nice boss and the mean boss. Right? So, in 2022, I'm just gonna, you know, tell you how I got out of there. In 2022, after enduring so much of the shit, or in 2021 was it even, I basically had a mental breakdown in my parents' car when they drove me to work once. You know, because they did on a Saturday. Buses don't really go on that day, so I needed to be driven. But I basically had a mental breakdown in my, goddammit, in my parents' car. And, you know, because I had that, my parents were like, okay, you know what? You take next week off, we go to the doctor, and you basically get help. So that's what we did next day. Or on Monday, actually. So, I was like fighting with myself. I was like, can I really just take off? You know, take sick leave like that? And they said, of course you can. Right? So I basically went to a psychiatrist and I signed up for a clinic, mental clinic. And yeah, after some time off, I went back to work and, you know, everything went back to, you know. By the way, I said earlier that we were also working during COVID. And because everyone was leaving, like storage people were leaving, at the end, I was not only salesperson, but also did the storage stuff. So I was basically working for two, right? You know, I should have said this earlier. You know, this video is very unscripted, so I'm very sorry. But, yeah, it, like, at the end, I was working for, like, two people. Because, we didn't have storage people. Because they all left. And, you know, I guess no one wanted to work there, or they couldn't find people to work there. I don't know. But basically, at the end, I was basically working two jobs. That's probably also what contributed to my mental breakdown. Because aside of getting yelled at every day, ranted at every day, I also did work for two. While getting ranted at every day. So, in 2022, I snapped and I had a mental breakdown. So I basically signed up to a mental clinic. And they called me after a few months in 2022. And they basically said, hey, you can come next week. And I was like, okay, good to know. I just gotta tell that to my boss. So I have to tell that to my nice boss. So I went there, after, you know, saying them thank you and hanging up. I went to my nice boss and basically said, hey, the clinic just called me. I'm gonna be there next week for around 6 weeks. And he said, we cannot do that. We cannot do that. Right? And I'm like, why? And he's like, because we cannot put someone in your place. We cannot teach people. We don't have the money nor time for it. And, you know, and I'm like, because you gotta know, again, I'm very, like, in Germany we say indoctrinated. I don't know if that's a term, and I'm doing very bad right now. But basically, you know, I've been, you could say Stockholm syndrome, right? Because I was literally questioning, is he right? Like, am I, you know, because I'm, you know, partly responsible for the store, because, you know, I talk to the customers and, you know, I'm a part of the company, right? So, he says to me, we cannot do that. We cannot put someone in your place that fast. And, you know, at the time COVID hit, you know, it hit very hard, like everyone, and, you know, they weren't, I don't want to say too much, but, you know, they had issues. At least that's what my boss told me, right? They had issues. They, they had issues. Like, COVID hit them hard. But basically he said that they cannot let me go for that long. And if they wouldn't exist anymore in like 2 weeks. They celebrated 20 plus years last year, so congratulations on that. So they're still around. But basically he like had this whole, you know, talk about how, like, you know, oh, and he also said that I should just reschedule the appointment, like delay the appointment. Because I don't have anything. I'm not sick. Because, and I quote, I don't stand there with a knife at my throat, you know, trying to end myself. That's what he said. So I was literally like fighting with myself. I was like, okay, like is he right? You know, is it really that bad? And can I really just take that time off? You know, I was seriously fighting with myself. Because, you know, aside of the mean boss and, well, I guess also a nice boss, because I had a good relationship with everyone there, right? I had a good bond with everyone except the mean boss and his wife. And that's the reason I stayed that long, because, you know, aside of the other boss, everything was fine, quote unquote, right? So I was fighting with myself. Is that really, like, do I really need to go, like, or is he right? I mean, obviously, you know, he's not right about that I'm not mentally ill. Like, I know I'm mentally ill, right? So, but I was like fighting with myself because, you know, he had this whole talk about how they have issues, and I knew they had issues, right? Or maybe he just told me that and that was a lie, I don't know. But I felt for him and the company, because, you know, they were struggling, and I don't want to leave them struggling, right? Because, you know, I'd feel bad. So that's why I was fighting with myself, because, you know, I didn't want to be the reason the company, quote unquote, runs it to the ground. So I kind of talked it out with family members and friends, and everyone said, take that time, like, just take the time, it's your health, and you have the, you know, it's your right, it's your health, right? So after, you know, lots of that, I basically said, screw it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, right? Even though I was still sort of fighting with myself and guilt, you know. I basically went to my boss next week because I had like vacation, so I could only catch him the next week, like days before I went to that clinic. So I went back there, and I basically said, and I even said, I don't want to talk about this long. I'm going to that clinic. And I said, I'm going to that clinic because just because I'm not standing with a knife here now doesn't mean that it won't happen, right? At one point. And when I told him that I'm gonna go to the clinic, he snapped at me. The nice boss snapped at me. He was like, do you know what's at stake here? Do you, like, after all I've done for you, I've drove you to work, I've done this, I've done that, and you're just, like, so, he didn't say egoistical, but, like, unempathic, or, I don't know how to call it. But basically he had this whole rant about how his career and also the career of his wife was at stake. Remember, nice boss? And, you know, he had this whole rant, and he was literally like talking to me, right? I don't remember all the details, you know, because it's like, what, 4 years ago, and I don't... But basically, I was like, trying to stand my ground, and it ended with me just, like, trying to leave, because I literally, you know, I said, hey, I don't want to talk about this long. I'm gonna do it, it's my choice. And as I was about to leave, he said, you come back here, you know, I am the one who ends the conversation. And it was basically when I was like snapped. Like, something in my brain snapped, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I laid my stuff down, I went straight to the break room and grabbed my stuff and was basically like, you know what? I'm out. Bye. And he yelled something after me along those lines of, he's gonna fire me, fire me, I don't know the word, delayless, but that he's gonna fire me, even though I'm the one leaving, right? But, you know, I'm like, I don't care, bye. So that's when I left, and as I left, there was a big boulder of, you know, stress leaving me, but also a big boulder of guilt, because, you know, I basically just left the company where I basically was, I felt like a pillar of the company, because again, everyone left, and there was only like, what, 1 or 2 people able at that time to watch the store, you know, like I did. And, you know, the other colleagues had to work overtime, would have to work overtime because I was gone, so they have to put someone in my place and stuff. So that's what kind of was laying on my conscience. But, you know, I just left and snapped, and I was seriously like, can I do that? Like, can I just stay out? You know, won't that have consequences? And basically everyone told me no. Because, you know, they're not my boss. Well, they were my boss, but, you know, they're not my... You know, they can't force me to work there. Apparently. Right? So, after that, you know, I went to the clinic. I had to go back to have the contract for a resignation signed. So I had to go back there, and it was the most haunting feeling. Because, you know, like, imagine going back to the people you yelled at yesterday, right? You have to, like, live with that guilt. But basically, you know, that was done, and the other boss, like, it was the mean boss at the next day being there, and he had to sign the contract, right? But, and the mean boss also, you know, said some stuff about, okay, well, you're gone, and we're gonna be, you know, bankrupt in like 2 weeks, and I'm gonna have, you know, a heart attack, or people will have a heart attack because they worked so hard because you were gone, that kind of deal. And he also said that, you know, he didn't know that I was, you know, mentally ill, or that I was depressed, because I was like laughing all the time, I was making jokes, you know, that kind of deal. And I was thinking to myself, well, you only saw me laughing because you never saw me, you know, behind closed doors, behind your closed doors, because you're the main reason I'm like this, right? Because you ranted at me every day. You played mind games. You literally... Could you call it emotional abuse? Probably. He did that to everyone, right? And, you know, so he signed the contract, and I basically left, and that was that. I was gone from there. We're good. And to this day, I'm still very insecure. When it comes to work, I always think I'll have a boss, you know, like that in the back of my head, who keeps saying, don't slack off, don't sit around too hard, you know, you need to work, you need to be productive, you know. And, you know, could you call it a traumatic experience? Probably. Because imagine being ranted at and basically doing things wrong for 4.5 years. You constantly think you're the problem. You constantly think, like, when you're talked to, what did I do wrong this time, right? So, yeah, that's what happened, and you know, it really broke me, and it's one of the reasons I don't want to go back to retail. The other reason is that I just can't deal with the work that's very unpredictable. You know, you're doing stuff and you get pulled away because of a customer, and that was basically when I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm not doing retail anymore. But yeah, that was that. Again, like, I was very, like, I felt very guilty because, again, I had, like, a good relationship with the nice boss, even though he turned out not to be that nice of a boss. And now that I think about it and look at earlier chats that I had, he also complained a lot, and he, he also, complained a lot, ranted a lot, Yeah. This has been a long rant. I don't know if I'll probably upload this uncut. This has been one hell of a rant, one hell of a video. It's like my 37th take. I might have left out a lot of details. I got those like anecdotes, right? And I told you the story. Basically, 4.5 years of thinking I'm the problem, being ranted at, yelled at. You could say emotionally abused, and just feeling awful. And to this day, I'm questioning, like, am I the problem? Did I do so much wrong? Because I admit I forgot stuff, right? A lot. And because they yelled at me, I did even worse. But yeah, this has been one hell of a video. I'm just gonna upload this now and see what comes of it. Yeah, have a good one, and I'll see you on Sunday, I guess. I'll take care, and